Hello, I'm Andy Conte, Director of the Center for Media Innovation at Point Park University in downtown Pittsburgh. We're hosting a series of conversations about the state of the journalism industry as we're preparing to hand out the second round of funding for the Doris O'Donnell Innovations and Investigative Journalism Fellowship. I'm joined today by Kristen Hare of the Poynter Institute. Kristen, hello.
Hi.
So I think you have one of the most difficult and maybe most depressing jobs in journalism these days, because you're keeping track of really everyone who's lost a job in journalism because of the pandemic and media outlets that have gone under. What is that like?
It's grim, but I don't, the way that I think of it is that I am lucky to still have a job, that many of our colleagues and peers are out of work now or, underemployed. Newsrooms are closing, and while it's sad and stressful and kind of never ending, it feels important to recognize that this is happening and to capture as much of it as we can. When I first started reporting on layoffs, it was one story and another. And at some point as a reporter, you realize this is not a trickle anymore. This is a flood. We need a place to capture all of it. And I mentioned to Poynter's president, Neil Brown, that I was going to do this. And he said, it's really important that we do this and don't let these jobs and places disappear anonymously.
How bad are things right now? Like, how many journalists have lost their jobs? How many newsrooms have closed?
We don't have a count of the number of journalists that have lost their jobs, but I get updates every day in my inbox from journalists. Between layoffs, furloughs, pay cuts, cuts in print days, all of that, it's pretty big. I can tell you that we have a list that we published this week of newsrooms that have closed, local newsrooms that have closed, and
Wow.
For sure more than 30. And there are another 15 or so that are temporarily on hold.
So even though you're dealing with this grim total every day and having to update it, do you see any hope then? Do you feel like there are any positives?
The thing that I see every day when I work is the really hard work of local journalists who are enduring furloughs and pay cuts and continuing to do what they do because, as we tend to be mission driven, and this is a really important time. There are also places that have formed connections with their communities that have asked for financial support, and they're getting it. And I think we're at an inflection point for newsrooms that previously didn't feel comfortable for one reason or another telling their community they needed financial support. We're now seeing those places get it. The light bulb has come on that, this is a symbiotic relationship. We can't do it without you, and you can't do it without us.
Yeah, there was no shame in saying, hey, buy a subscription, right? I mean, sometimes journalists feel bad about that. And it's like, no, that's got to be part of the business model. And everyone has to understand that if we don't all contribute to it, that this may not be here for us. Could you talk specifically about the issue of investigative journalism at the local level? Because that's what the Journalism Fellowship that we're giving out is really intended to focus on. How much of a threat is that facing?
Investigative journalism is among the many, many traditional roles that we have seen local newspapers play that have been cut back. And in some places we're seeing it come back, but along with photographers and copy editors, investigative journalism has taken a real hit. And this has been happening for more than a decade. And we've seen places in Oklahoma, other states around the country. Mississippi just started one where they start investigative centers for journalism, which is great. There's also projects like ProPublica's local reporting network that's bringing investigative journalism back. But, the case for investigative journalism is when it's measured what people are subscribing for, what they're paying for, it's investigative journalism. It's the kind of stuff that is bringing light to things in your community. Unfortunately, that work takes a lot of time and a lot of money. And so it's critically important. People will pay for it. We can't give up on it. And newsrooms, it's part of the case of why you matter is you have to have really strong investigative journalism.
Okay, so and as you're thinking about, if you're somebody out there thinking about applying for this award, Kristen, do you have any recommendations for them? How do you go and find a story idea that is worth the $20,000 fellowship and something you might be able to spend months on? Do you have any recommendations for that?
I would think really closely about ecosystems and partnerships in a community. Who could we work with? And I think that it's not enough now to do a one great big investigation. You need to find as many ways to reach as many people as possible. So what relationships do you have, in your community with other media organizations? And then what is going to actually make the biggest difference. And I would also ask myself, what are the threads you've been gathering that you've never had time to pursue? I have lots of those, ideas myself that the tyranny of the right now always takes over. So the things that will cause change will be widely received, that you can partner with, and that will really make a big difference.
It's a great idea to involve the community. It's something that journalists traditionally have not always done, and something that, they just, wasn't at all a part of investigative reporting up until several years ago. And now I think you're right. It's such a critical piece. So thanks for the recommendation, and thanks for taking the time to chat with us today.
Thanks so much for having me, and good luck to everybody who applies.
For more information about the Doris O'Donnell Fellowship, please visit dorisodonnellfellowship.com. The deadline for this year's award is June 30th.